Thank you, Christy, for your half of this very fascinating and interesting experiment that we have been reviewing. Hopefully, by now, you all have a pretty good and clear understanding of the main objectives in this experiment and what the experimenters are or were trying to prove. I think it is common knowledge that we have a widespread perception that in dating situations, women who play hard to get are more desirable and intriguing to men than women who are easily attainable. Men seem to think that there is something really mysterious and interesting about a woman who requires significant effort to attain on their part. So before I dive into my half of this presentation, I want to ask the class to please click on the second link that we have provided for you. In this short musical video, you will see how Danny, the man in the video, acts much differently towards Sandy after she starts to put on more of a hard-to-get act. So please push pause and watch the following video. After watching that particular video and comparing it to the one that Christy provided to you in her half of the presentation, I think you probably noticed an evident change in behavior on the man's part. When Sandy was very openly interested and intrigued by Danny, he kind of shut her down. Conversely, in this video, as soon as she makes him work for it a little more, he shows a very obvious and intense interest in her. So we chose these videos so that you could better understand this hard-to-get phenomenon that we are discussing throughout the review of this experiment. So on Christy's half of the review of this experiment, you saw that none of these experiments proved the experimenters' original hypothesis. So now let's go back to what their original hypothesis was. They claimed that a hard-to-get date was more desirable than an easy-to-get date. And you just learned that they were unsuccessful in the first 5 experiments to prove that theory. So I will be discussing with you what the experimenters did differently to ultimately prove their theory to be correct. The first thing they did was change and revise their original hypothesis a little bit. So instead of making the assumption that all hard-to-get women in dates were more desirable, they made the claim that hard-to-get women in dates were more desirable when they are hard for everyone else, yet easy for them. So in experiment 6, the first subject arrived at a computer match office and was given folders filled with information on 5 different women. All of this information that was given to him was fictitious information on fictitious women, and which he was obviously unaware of at the time. And in this folder, these women described themselves and gave some background information about who they were, their age, what they looked like, their political and religious preferences, their education, things like that. So these women were also given something called a date selection form. This is a really important part of the overall experiment. So this was a form that the women filled out regarding her first impression of the subject. And the experimenter told the subject that these women were able to previously come in and review the information on the subject. And on these date forms, the women would indicate whether they were very interested in the subject, kind of interested in him, or not interested in him at all. The subject was then asked to review all of the information provided by each of the women and then choose his date based on all of that combined information. These date selection forms, they're really important because they allowed the experimenter to manipulate the overall elusiveness of each woman. So one of the women appeared, based on the date selection card, to be consistently hard to get with all of the men, and she really showed no enthusiasm whatsoever for dating any of them. The next woman was quite opposite of the first, and she was interested in all of the men. She actually showed no disinterest in any of them. This last woman, who is known as the selectively hard-to-get woman, she was similar to the consistently hard-to-get woman in the fact that she showed very minimal interest in 4 of the 5 men. However, she showed enthusiasm only for the subject. So she's the selectively hard-to-get woman, the one who doesn't want anyone else, the one who puts on that hard-to-get front, yet shows attraction and interest in one individual. So the subject thought that he was part of a first impression study along with the dating research project, and the first impression questionnaire that he was required to fill out had 3 different sections. These sections included liking for various dates, assets and liabilities ascribed to various dates, and liabilities attributed to easy-to-get women. This was a really interesting and important part of the overall study and experiment because of the subject's answers and how those answers related to the conclusion of this new and revised hypothesis. So in the assets and liabilities ascribed to various dates section, the experimenters felt strongly that the subject would pick the selective woman. They predicted this because they thought that the subject would assume that this selective woman would have all of the positive and good characteristics that the hard-to-get woman and easy-to-get woman acquired without any of their liabilities. So, for example, at times, a hard-to-get woman may be seen as somewhat full of themselves or, a little too conceited and snotty. Conversely, the easy-to-get woman might be seen as a little bit too needy and clingy, maybe too high maintenance. However, these women obviously would have some good qualities about them too. And for the hard-to-get woman might be, really popular and well-liked and wanted by other men. And the easy-to-get woman might be really warm and very friendly and sweet. So this selectively hard-to-get woman is predicted to be seen by the subject as possessing all of these combined positive characteristics between both women and just not having any of the liabilities or downfalls that they may possess. So on the liabilities attributed to easy-to-get women, the subject was asked to view a variety of negative statements and see if the subject attributed any of those particular statements to the easy-to-get woman. Some of these statements included things like, she seems like the type who would be too dependent on me, or she seems like the type who would probably demand too much attention and affection of me. After the subject completed all of these forms and went over all of the information on the different women, the experimenter asked him why he made the choices that he did. And oftentimes, the men who chose the selectively easy-to-get woman would say something along the lines of, well, she chose me, and that made me feel really good about myself. And the consistently easy-to-get woman was oftentimes rejected because of her desire to date everyone. There was absolutely no feeling of selectivity there, and the men really didn't like that. And the consistently hard-to-get woman was frequently described as probably being really snotty or just way too picky. So, at the end of the experiment, all of these results were very, very strongly supported the revised hypothesis that men do in fact favor women who are selectively hard to get, meaning, again, hard for everyone else except for that one person. So I think this idea, it illustrates the notion that men aren't really attracted to women who are completely unattainable to them personally, but they are attracted to those who are unattainable for anyone else. It's almost as if it gives them this sense of power, knowing that they got the woman that no one else got. So when the experimenters tested why the selective woman was so highly favored over her rivals, their hypothesis was again strongly confirmed. It was clear that the subjects felt that this woman had the best of all worlds and possessed only assets without any liabilities. Additionally, a contrast of the easy-to-get and selective woman was conducted in order to see whether the selective woman was seen as possessing less difficulties in a potential relationship than the easy-to-get woman. And again, the selective woman was strongly preferred to the other women. So at the very conclusion of this study, the experimenters came to the realization through all of these extensive studies that a woman can intensify her desirability toward a man if she obtains a reputation for being hard to get without actually being hard to get. So if she can convince other people to view her as the hard-to-get woman, but then demonstrate through her actual behavior to whoever it is that she is interested in, that she's attracted to him and interested in him, she will be the woman that everyone more or less wants. So this was a very interesting experiment, and I think it showed a lot about the complexity of attraction and even the complexity of human behavior and why we are attracted to people. So I hope you enjoyed our presentation. Thank you.